from the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
All right, everyone. Happy Monday. It's March 1st, 2021. Who would have thunk it? We're in the third month of this year already. Time is flying by. We have a lot to talk about today, including some quickly patched serious vulnerability in the NATO firewall. Microsoft releases a new open source for Solorigate. The Lazarus group launches a whole new set of attack. And we'll talk about SolarWinds and the outrageous blame game that's going on there. I have a mouthful to say about that as well. But before we get started, thanks so much for tuning in. We are live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. You can subscribe and comment live on our show right now. So please do so at any point period in time. Good morning to all of those watching us live right now. Few things. If you're listening on your favorite podcast listening platform after the fact, one, we'd love for you to join us live. Love it. I'm all about doing these shows live. I want to do more and more and more live shows because I love our interaction. I love to answer questions and take in your comments. I think that's an integral part of communication and free speech and a lot of different things that we need to have a discussion about openly in cybersecurity. That's number one. So if you're listening on your favorite podcast listening platform, tune in live. But number two, if you can't, please subscribe, give us a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast listening platform. And please, please, please share this podcast. Thank you to Know Before and Wistic for supporting our show today. Without their support, the show would not be possible. You can see more about them in the show notes. So check them out as well. All right. Before we get started, though, I need my ceremonial coffee sip with all of you amazing people that are tuning in live or listening at a later date. Take your favorite beverage. I'm drinking an espresso and have a sip with me. The idea of holding an espresso cup from the bottom, it's a very interesting thing. There is actually history behind this. I'll have to tell you about it a little bit tomorrow. Why people like sometimes hold, if you ever see people hold their cup just like I am right now, there's a history behind this. It's actually a very historical and significant kind of way to hold a mug per se, especially one without a handle like this one. So, but that's for a whole other day. Now let's get right into a critical vulnerability which was discovered in a firewall appliance made by a Germany-based cybersecurity company, Genua, which could be useful to threat actors once they gain access to an organization network. This, according to Austrian cybersecurity consultancy firm SEC Consult. The Genua Gonguit is a firewall. The Genua Gate. I've been practicing this all morning. You'd think I'd have it down by now. Is a firewall designed for protecting internal networks against external threats, segmenting internal networks, and protecting machine-to-machine communication. The company claims its GenoGate firewall is the only one in the world to receive a highly resistant rating from the German government and says it's compliant with NATO's and NATO's restricted and the EU restricted requirement for data protection. The vendor says its product is being used, so forth. However, over the weekend, the SEC Consult revealed that GenoGate firewall is affected by a critical authentication bypass vulnerability tagged CVE 2021-27215 in the product admin interface. An attacker who has network access to an admin interface can exploit the vulnerability to log into the device admin panel as any users, including the root user, regardless of the password they use. An attacker is able to gain full admin root access rights within the admin web interface, which enables reconfiguration of the whole firewall, such as firewall, rule set, email filtering, config, web application, firewall settings, proxy settings, etc. The advisory has now said that the vulnerability which was discovered now has a no patch as of yet. It appears to affect all versions of the firewall. So if you are using this, it is critical that you get some controls in place to mitigate this specific risk. Again, security devices also have security challenges and must be addressed almost immediately. Microsoft releases an open source resource for the Solorigate threat hunting. This was released on Thursday of last week. We were already done when this came out on the Practitioner briefing. Obviously, Friday was a Jewish holiday. I couldn't jump on a live and talk about this. So I'm bringing it up today in case you missed it. Believed to be sponsored by Russia, the Solorigate hacked into the SolarWinds 2019 using the Sundrop malware. They inserted the Sunburst backdoor into the SolarWinds Orion monitoring product. The company has released the source code of the code QL queries, which it used to analyze the code at scale and identify any code level indications of compromise associated with this Solorigate malware. They're open sourcing this according to Microsoft, which, by the way, FireEye, Microsoft has done an unbelievable job of transparency in the aftermath of SolarWinds. We're going to get into SolarWinds in just a moment as well. The tech company also explains that it's chose to work with the code QL for this analysis because the engine allows for the creation of a database that captures the model of the compelling code. Microsoft has also made C queries met for the assessment of code level IOCs available in the code QL as well. There's a GitHub repository and so forth. And there'll be a guidance on GitHub of how to use this, so you can check this out. Definitely something really cool to run in your system. So before we continue, though, March 17th, the CISO Conversation webinar series is launching again. I've got some great guests joining me. One of them will be a guest on this week's CISO Talk, so you won't want to miss it. Gray Meyer, Chris Roberts, Nick Sorensen, and myself are going to be talking about supply chain, specifically threats like these. You won't want to miss it. March 17th. You can go to our website at cyberhubpodcast.com to register now for the event. You won't want to miss this one, folks. All right. Lazarus Group targets defense companies with the ThreatNeedle malware. So let's get a spear phishing campaign linked to the North Korean APT uses nuke speed malware in a cyber espionage attacks against defense companies. The prolific North Korean APT, known as Lazarus Group, is behind a spear phishing campaign aimed at stealing critical data from defense companies by leveraging an advanced malware called ThreatNeedle, according to new research. The elaborate and ongoing cyber espionage campaign used emails with COVID-19 themes paired with publicly available personal information of targets to lure them into taking malware bait. This is according to Kaspersky, which first observed this activity in the middle of 2020. Kaspersky researchers go on to say in a blog post that they've identified organizations in more than a dozen countries that were affected by the attack. They said adversaries were successful at stealing data and transmitting it to remote servers under Lazarus control. The researchers said that they said that they've been tracking ThreatNeedle, which is a cluster of manuscript, aka nuke sped, for about 2 years and have linked it exclusively to the Lazarus APT. Researchers also observed an entire life cycle of the latest campaign, which they said helped them gain insight into the scope of the Lazarus work, as well as connect the dots between different campaigns. It begins with emails that pique victims' interest with their mention of COVID-19 and their embellishment, and they're embellished with personal information to make them seem more legitimate, according to researchers. Researchers also said that Lazarus did its due diligence before choosing its targets. This isn't random or mass, but rather an extremely targeted attack. To ensure the emails appeared authentic, they also registered accounts with public email services to make sure it looked similar to like a medical center's real email address, etc. So you can see a lot more about this on the thread post website, and also there's linked on our website at cyberhubpodcast.com. Now we'll get into SolarWinds. So at every breach, there's a scapegoat. We've seen it time and time, over and over again. Sometimes it's the CISOs, sometimes it's the CIO, and sometimes it's an intern. According to SolarWinds executives, they're blaming an intern for leaking the password SolarWinds 123, which essentially led to the beginning of the SolarWinds breach. This is according to several current and former top executives over at SolarWinds are now blaming a certain company intern for what was called a critical lapse in the company's password security that actually went sort of undiagnosed for a number of years, and they want to blame all this on an intern. How about looking in the mirror, SolarWinds executives, current and former, and understanding that an intern is not a job. It is someone who's coming to learn. Where is your training? Where is your peer review? Where are your processes in this scenario? It is your failure as management as to why this leaked, why this password was used, and why you are victims of such a massive scale cyber attack. There's multiple stories about this online from major news commentaries. I am going to stick with this one and just say, shame on you guys at SolarWinds. Like, literally, like, this is not even funny. I mean, blaming an intern, and whoever that intern is, whether you know them or you don't, whether you're watching or not, this is not your fault. You were an intern. You were brand new at your job. You were just trying to do what you thought was right. You thought you were setting something up extremely temporarily, probably with the hopes that later on this would change. And apparently the hygiene and the follow-through just was not there. Now, SolarWinds, you're a victim of a crime, but trying to push this down to an intern is bad for business. And it's also bad for the cybersecurity community when you try to blame this on an intern, because it makes you look even worse. And if anyone thought of doing business with you, they're probably going to think about it 3 or 4 times over, because now this shows that this was systematic in your organization, that you were not paying attention. And that's significant, at least for me as a CISO. Extremely significant. Folks, that's it for our practitioner brief here today. We'll be back with a lot more tomorrow, continuing our practitioner brief series here, where we're going to talk a lot more about the things that are going on. Make sure to subscribe to our podcast. Make sure to follow us on your favorite social media platforms, looking up the CyberHub podcast. The 221 and 2021 challenge still remains. If you're looking for work, contact me. I'll send you the Google Drive address to submit your CV. We go through them, we're reviewing. We have over 200 volunteers looking over CVs, folks. So if you're looking for work, you're looking to break into cyber, that's the place to be. Until then, folks, I'm signing off. My name is James Azar. Please make sure to subscribe, and we'll see you tomorrow at 9 a.m. live right here on your favorite social media platform.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.